One.
Thank you for all your texts already on something we talked about an hour ago on Five Live Breakfast, the trauma in some cases of childbirth and how you got through it, not just as a mum, but as a dad as well, because it's not a story just about women. If you've been present at a birth where you've seen your girlfriend, wife, partner go through an awful time, you've seen your child in that sort of situation, it can be incredibly difficult and it can haunt couples for years, the experience afterwards. So do share yours with us, 85058 on the text, at BBC Five Live on social media. The reason that we're talking about this is because there was a blog post it was written a few days ago, but it's been really widely shared on social media now, and it's prompting most people who read it actually to dig deep and share their experiences as well. Sarah was the person who wrote it. Hello, Sarah.
Hi there.
Hiya. Did you sit down thinking that it would have the impact that it did when you got all this off your chest?
Not at all. No, I really just started to write the blog because I needed to for myself. It was really just writing that was helping me to process the birth and my feelings about it.
Yeah.
But then I wrote this post that was less cathartic and more was to sort of explain my feelings to other people. And then I shared it and it really just took off. It went viral. Now over 139,000 people have seen it. And just hundreds of women have come back to me saying that it really resonates, that they also had traumatic births and that they didn't even realize that they were going through post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
Because in fact, it turns out that 1 in 3 births will have some kind of symptoms of post-traumatic stress, or anxiety or fear or hypervigilance, flashbacks even.
What happened to you, Sarah? Tell me
people.
tell me about your own experience and what happened in your case.
Okay, so I guess, so I went into birth aiming for as natural a birth as possible because I'd been told that, if I wanted to avoid the spiral of medical intervention that they warn you about, I'd have to avoid drugs. So for about 20 hours, I was having a drug-free water birth, but then something changed and the baby just stopped descending and nobody knew why. And so I was rushed into a room where there was strip lighting and, to a hospital bed with stirrups. And I was totally naked because I'd been in the water birth situation before. And then suddenly there was a dozen strangers around me and it was all panicked and lots of beeping. No one was telling me what was going on. And it was really just like I wasn't even there in the room, like I didn't matter at all, not like I was the person who was giving birth. And I was just really scared, actually, that both me and my baby were going to die. There was lots of hushed tones and beeping. And then suddenly I was told that they were going to have to cut me open. I hadn't had any painkillers. And then instruments were pushed into me without my consent. And so it was both excruciatingly painful and it was also violating too. So I just sort of, when my baby came out, luckily she was alive and I'm really grateful for that, of course. But I was also just in total shock at what had just happened. Just the heightened sense of fear and pain and the consent issue as well. I just couldn't even look at my baby. I was just so much in shock. And, luckily that changed with time. I became fiercely protective and there was no issues bonding or anything. But for weeks, actually for months, I was just really frightened all the time that she was going to die because of that experience. And, if to the point where if I didn't watch her breathe all night, she might die. And so after about 6 months of feeling this really acute anxiety, but thinking that that's just what motherhood was, because I had no sort of benchmark for this, I was actually diagnosed as having postnatal post-traumatic stress by a health worker. I've been to the GP several times and with various sort of health complaints like numbness and tingling and insomnia and all these sort of warning signs, but the GPs just aren't really aware of this.
Do you think in your case, Sarah, you talked about going into it and how you'd been told that it needed to be drug-free and natural and that was best for you and best for the baby. Do you think if somebody had prepared you differently and said, look, this is one way to do it, but also there might need to be medical intervention, this is what might happen, do you think that would have helped?
I certainly think it would have helped. I don't think it necessarily would have avoided the PTSD, the post-traumatic stress, because it was as much about how that birth was handled by the medical professionals in the room as my own preparation for that, because you have no control over how birth goes. So there's certainly that element of a woman and a family actually being prepared that actually it could go in any direction. And even statistics around how many births end in C-section, end in assistance with forceps or ventouse, end in an episiotomy, that would be really helpful for women to not feel like they'd failed if they hadn't done a drug-free water birth. But it's not just that. It certainly isn't just that. It's also about how the medical professionals care for you, care for you as a patient in your own right. So when you give birth, it's not just about the baby. Of course, that's the primary aim. No one would want to come out of that situation without a healthy baby. But it's not the only thing that matters.
No, can I read to you a couple of texts that have come in while you've been talking?
Yeah, please do.
One says, it was an emergency. How lucky you had specialists available. And another suggests that you're ungrateful. Which I'm sure you're not. I mean, this is, I suppose, part of the issue we're highlighting, isn't it?
This is exactly the issue.
If you have a healthy baby, you're expected to behave in a certain way.
It's really that sort of response that silences women. It stops women from speaking out on a really important and traumatic issue. And it's not just women, it's also men. Like my partner was in that room, totally shocked, fearing for the fact that I might die, that our baby might die, and the after effects of that. If you had a house fire that you narrowly escaped in the middle of the night, people would be horrified and there for you and to support you with how traumatic an experience that was for you. Because childbirth is so commonplace, it's assumed that mothers are just supposed to put on a happy face and get on with it. But this can just be life-changing.
Just a final thought, Sarah. I mean, we were talking about preparation. My first birth definitely falls into the awful. I mean, I was induced at 12 days over, about 30 hours, failure to progress, emergency C-section in the end. It was, whenever we talk about drugs and epidurals and all those things, I can tick all of those off the list. But it's not necessarily a story that I tell people before they have a baby, because although I've got no problem sharing, I'll share it with you now quite happily, but you never want to kind of frighten people, do you?
And there's also that part of it as well, that sense that we shouldn't tell pregnant women or women who, might go on to have children, how it can be, because we don't want to scare them. But the fact is, unless you have the sort of range of realities, you are very ill prepared for what might happen. Like, you're just looking for this really positive thing. And so anything that is different then looks like a failure or looks like something that went terribly wrong. So I do think that we need that whole spectrum of births to be discussed, both to prepare women, but also because we shouldn't be silencing 200,000 women a year who are going to experience symptoms of trauma, because, it's just not okay to silence people who are experiencing trauma.
Sarah, thank you so much for talking about it so frankly and so honestly. That's Sarah who wrote that blog post. Really split on the text, actually. I mean, some of the text that we had earlier this morning, sharing your experiences, but as Sarah was talking, I mean, I gave you a flavour of what some of the text was saying there. You're lucky to be alive. You're lucky that your baby's alive. 85058 at BBC 5 Live. Is this something that we should be tapping into? Should we be talking more openly about it? Or should we be going the other way and taking some of the, I don't know, the problems, not the problems. It's hard to even explain, really, isn't it? Should we be taking some of the issues away from it, making it simpler? It's giving birth. People do it every day. 85058 on the text, at BBC 5 Live on social media. It's 10 to 8.
This